In the Shrouds, a new camera technology allows people to watch their deceased loved ones as they rest inside their graves. This is the newest film from David Cronenberg, so you know it's going to be provocative, and let's be honest, it's probably going to have some weird sex stuff too. Let's take a look. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together and talk about a movie we watched. It's that simple, and today we're looking at the latest David Cronenberg movie, The Shrouds. So that is what we're going to discuss. It's set in basically, it's not even the future, it's kind of just present day, but there's this new technology exists to have effectively screens on gravestones that will show you your loved one in the ground, and not only just show them, like technically they're wearing like a sort of camera, well, shroud that is full 360, so you can spin them around like a 3D model if you want, just to get really into it. Like, that's the premise.
It exists in a world where somebody had a really messed up idea and nobody told them no.
Yeah, and it basically just takes a lot of otherwise just things that exist, but just sort of pushes it a little bit further. Like the idea of the AI avatar goes a little bit further than what reality actually has. But for the most part, it's kind of like a, you know, set in the next few weeks type of future, as opposed to.
I think the trope name is 20 minutes into the future.
Yeah,
it's like just barely ahead of time. So
that is the gist of the world that we're looking at here. It stars Vincent Cassel, Diane Kruger, Guy Pearce, and Sandrine Holt. And like I said, it's David Cronenberg, not to be confused with his children who are also making movies now. This is elderly Cronenberg, still showing that he has a perverse mind and knows how to do an uncomfortable sex scene, because we'll get a couple of those, don't you worry about it.
He puts the OG into Cronenberg.
So yes, we'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show, please do hit the like button on YouTube, helps out a bunch. Give us 5 stars on your podcast app, and you can support everything over at Patreon or via YouTube membership and get bonuses, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So had you heard much about the Shrouds before?
Oh God, no
not
at all. When I went to go watch this today, I was like, I remembered that we talked about it at the end of the last episode of like, oh, this is what's coming up next. And yet when I went in today, I was still like, oh yeah, Cronenberg. Like, this is not sticking in my mind at all going into it.
I mean, Cronenberg's name is the only thing really that was keeping it in my mind. Like, you know, prior to this, it was like, oh, that's Cronenberg's next movie. That means something, right? You know, obviously, I've had a very up and down relationship with Cronenberg. Some of his movies I really like, some I'm a little bit lukewarm on, and some that I just flat out dislike. He's kind of all over the place for me, but they're always at least somewhat interesting. You know, it's always coming from his mind. They always feel like someone's movie as opposed to just like something he's phoned in. So, you know, that's always something to appreciate. But I mean, I really liked his last movie, Crimes of the Future, and this was one that when they talked about what the premise was, it was actually a little unclear if it was like maybe a horror movie as well, and is it more of a horror movie than a sci-fi? Having watched it, it is definitely not a horror movie, and I'm very glad that when I asked someone, is it more horror or sci-fi, they said sci-fi, because it absolutely did not belong on Screams After Midnight at all. Yeah. There is nothing horror movie about this, other than maybe just slight discomfort of some ideas. It's not a horror movie at all. So
yeah, I feel like I vaguely remember like one jump scare, and that would be it. That's like the only thing in there. It's like, oh no, That's, like, it's all sci-fi beyond that.
Yeah, it's just a sci-fi drama. That is absolutely what it is. It's just the name Cronenberg, and then the fact that we're talking about dead bodies. Like, your mind just kind of naturally goes places.
I would also say that the poster that's around everywhere, it feels very horror. It feels like on borderline of, I guess, horror and sci-fi X-Files. It gives me a very X-Files feel.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, they've got that deep blue kind of, you know, it looks kind of creepy. Yeah, and the movie's not really that creepy. Again, outside of just some like broad kind of philosophical ideas of watching a dead person in their coffin, but that's more of like a, oh, we're discussing how healthy that is, as opposed to, oh, spooky corpses are jumping out at me and doing that kind of thing.
There's no point in this movie where all of a sudden the body's head just like snaps to the camera and like stares into it. Like, that would immediately put it in the horror category.
Yes, there's none of that. And arguably, they don't even use it as frequently as I thought they would. I thought they set up some stuff early on, and then it kind of drifts into other territory. But we'll get into more of that in spoiler sides of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, the main thing here, other than just the premise, is that Vincent Cassel's character, Karsh, he's the one who designed this new technology. He's in charge of it. And he is also, his own wife, who died of cancer, is in one of these graves. And a lot of the movie is very much about his grief that he's still processing years later. And I'll leave it there for spoiler free for now. But David, what did you think of the Shrouds?
So I like the overall intent of it. I guess that's the biggest thing. This feels, like you said at the beginning, it feels like it's his movie, and it feels deeply personal without getting too deep into it right now. Like, first paragraph on the Wikipedia article says how it was made in response of the death of his wife after she died from cancer. And like, even just seeing Karsh in this, seeing Vincent Cassel, I immediately was like, is this supposed to be David Cronenberg? Because they look very similar.
He cast someone who has a very kind of similar build and hair to what he has. Yeah, that's unmistakable.
Yep. So going through it with that sort of stuff and with that intent behind it, I think it is a deeply personal movie. I think that there's a lot that can be read into, a lot of metaphors that can be made here of the way that he views the death of his wife and the way that he views even just making these movies after the fact about it. There's a lot of interesting things to dive into there. I think the intent and the metaphor is good, but when I'm actually sitting down and looking at the plot, I feel like it talks a lot of big ideas and doesn't actually do much of anything. I think that by the time we hit the end of this movie, like, there has been some forward progress, but it feels like forward progress with like a curve to it. Like, we haven't actually gone as far forward as we may have hoped with all the stuff that happens. Like, by the time it ends, I'm not saying that it ends in like a very, I want it to be a end of Star Wars where there's like a big thing of, oh, we triumphed, we did it, whatever, like that. Like, I expect there to be a little bit of ambiguity, but I still don't feel like I'm not understood. I don't feel like I fully got everything I wanted to get out of this movie based off of like the first hour or so. So again, I like it from a emotional piece. I like it from a tone, a vibe check, but in terms of the actual plot itself, it just kind of felt like it was meandering, and then all of a sudden it just stopped.
Yeah, I would say that I think I kind of agree with most of that. I would say that it spends time setting up its world. I think it always looks pretty good. It always has a good sense of direction, and like, scene pacing is good, but there's definitely a point, maybe, and not even halfway, I'd say like maybe after about 30 minutes, where it started to become clear that this movie didn't really have much momentum, right? The things that it set up that felt like they were going to be the focal point of the plot and maybe start going down like even a conspiracy type angle, it kind of shifts away from that and just does some other things, and then it shifts back into it, and but then it's like too late to like pretend that it's as important as it once was. And I agree, it meanders, and it kind of becomes clear at a certain point that it's not going to be a movie that has any kind of big definitive finish or close, or even build to a big close. If anything, it just kind of stops. And I think part of that is by design, because it's this idea that like that the grief never leaves you kind of thing. Like, I'm sure he's trying to say something specific with that, but it's so just anticlimactic. And it's not just the ending. Like, as much as I think the ending is part of the problem here, I did find myself about halfway through starting to feel like, yeah, I think this is a bit of a misfire for me. And it's not that I don't like what he's trying to say or do with some of these ideas or themes or whatever else. I just don't think it's clicking together and engrossing it as a movie story. And and it just kind of keeps meandering at that point. And I got a little chuckle or the odd little scene that was intense in the way it was directed or something, so there's still talent there throughout the entire thing, but yeah, it kind of lost me at a certain point. And it often, I think sometimes when you show certain types of movie to your average moviegoer, they'll say certain things are boring, and it's a little bit of an eye-rolling thing, because you're just used to like whiz-bang action or whatever. Like, I'm down for a slow burn drama thriller, I'm down for the exploration of the mind. But at a certain point, I have to admit, I was just kind of being bored by the movie. And so, yeah, very lukewarm in the end, I would say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I kept on. The reason I hesitate to say bored is that I kept feeling like there were scenes that were perfect setups to do something interesting, to do something cool, especially you were saying the conspiracy angle and all that stuff. They kept on bringing up these things and then just letting them die out. It didn't lead to anything big. And by the time we got to the end, like, I don't know, I kind of felt like the main character at a certain point in this movie didn't want to do the solving the mystery angle. It felt like they talked about it for like 20 minutes at the beginning, and then they're like, all right, well, that happened, moving on to the rest of my life. But all the other characters were like, but what about this? Don't you want to check out this? And the main character's like, eh.
It felt like it was going to be the focal point of the movie. It felt like it was going to be about, okay, this conspiracy plot is going to tie into the ethics and potentially the problems of this technology and why it exists and what you could do with it. But then it kind of fades away. And then when we do finally come back around to it and there is some answers given, which obviously we won't get into yet, it's like a completely different thing. It's like, oh, no, this is actually what it is. And it's therefore not anything to do with what we were really talking about earlier. And it's not really that satisfying as a result of that, because it doesn't feel like it's really advancing things or opening up the movie to new ideas that clicks in a way that made sense to me. So, yeah, I felt very cold by the end of this, where a lot of the things weren't quite jiving for me. And there was definitely things that I thought they dropped, and then all of a sudden they came back, and I'm like, oh, I guess we are still doing this? I thought this was, we're done with this part of the movie, but okay, here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So. I there's so many aspects of this that I wish I liked more than I did, because, like I said, it kept on setting these things up, and I kept on doing these things where it looks like it was going to be big. And again, tone-wise, like metaphor-wise, I'd love to sit here and this be one of those reviews that we could spend like 30 minutes just breaking down the like visual language and what all the different aspects of it mean, and we probably could, but that'd be it. Like, I don't think when it comes to the actual plot itself, this is one of those movies that I don't think it makes sense to do in a straightforward sort of recap. It's kind of going to be plot by plot. And even then, I feel like each plot's going to be maybe 5 minutes tops. Like, it doesn't feel like there's much to talk about for each one at all. I
mean, plot by plot, what you're really saying with that for the most part is character by character. Like, you know, obviously everything revolves around the central character of Karsh, but like, it's like, okay, he's got a relationship with his sister-in-law. He's got a relationship with his brother-in-law, which, I mean, is that his brother-in-law? I guess it technically is. Like, if your siblings married to someone... No, if you're married to someone and their siblings married to someone, is that person your in-law? I guess they are, but...
The answer is yes, but obviously, like, you can use that logic to extend out as far as you want, as long as there are more brothers and sisters to continue down. So you got to draw the line somewhere. But also, they specifically bring that up in this movie of, since the connection point was his wife, who is since deceased, they're like, is it an ex-sister-in-law, an ex-brother-in-law now? What's the logic?
I agree with the logic, though, that he brings up, is that ex doesn't sound right, because ex sounds like they got divorced, and that's not what happened.
Yeah.
At one point, they say former brother-in-law, and that sounds better, but I feel like it's not like you broke up with her family because she's dead. Like, in theory, you can still have a very healthy, good family relationship with them because you grew over those years anyway. So I feel like, is it in-law? Maybe it's not technically in-law anymore, but I think in spirit, it's still the brother-in-law, if you were close to them.
Sister in spirit and brother in spirit. I like that more.
Now, this is not really what the movie's really getting at, but it's just a funny little detail that gets debated for a minute, and I'm like, yeah, these are interesting questions. You've got me thinking about it.
You've got to say, look, what happens in the afterlife? Can we move on from grief? What's the technical term for brother-in-law? These big questions will haunt us until the end of time.
But yeah, so yeah, you've got his relationship with his sister-in-law, his relationship with his distant, twice removed brother-in-law,
his guy Pearce.
You've got his relationship with this new kind of a client or wife of a client who's considering getting the Shrouds treatment, a wealthy client, and then otherwise there's just a couple of smaller like supporting characters.
You're right, smaller, but also I think a major plot point is the AI.
And technically he's got a relationship with his AI avatar, who is voiced by Diane Kruger, who plays both his wife whenever we see her either in a dream or whatever we see her in, and then also plays the sister character, Terry. So that's Becca and Terry, and then she also voices Honey, the AI. that's talking to him. So yeah, Diane Kruger was doing overtime on this. She's like, oh, I've got 3 roles, baby. I can do all this work.
Well, one of them's mocap, one of them's dead, and then the other one's the sister. So I think she basically had one role there.
Do you think she did mocap for the Avatar?
I don't know. I know she did the voice for it, but there's one scene specifically that has very like fluid movements that I have to assume somebody mocapped. Maybe it wasn't her, but someone did.
I feel like the animation style though is so simplistic and cartoony. I don't think they would need to like whip out the Andy Serkis rig to get someone to do that. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
James Cameron was filming down the street. They just used the tech for that. Why not?
We're going to treat this like Andy Serkis playing Gollum. We're going to have someone doing this little, Wii style Avatar looking character.
Nah, they just took all the tech that was in the dumpster after Cats and used that instead.
That's bringing back bad memories. So we got Vincent Cassel, who seems perfect for a Cronenberg movie. I don't know if he's been in one before, off the top of my head, but. And what I mean by that is he tends to be in a lot of movies where he's kind of like a sleazy sex crazed man, and Cronenberg has a lots of sex stuff in his movies. So it feels like a match made in heaven on that front. And then we got Guy Pearce, like we said, playing Maury, Maury. I can't remember how you say Maury.
I've always heard Maury. Yeah,
Maury. Yeah, I've never met a Maury before. This is a alien name to me. And then Sandrine Holt is playing kind of the wealthy potential client of the company, and she was in Mr. Robot for sure, and she was in a couple other things that I can't remember off the top of my head, but she's popped up enough that I started noticing the name Sandrine Holt. So, but she's in here as well. So, we have a decent little cast, if nothing else. So that's always nice.
No, I didn't mind any of the actors or actresses. I think they did a fine job with what they had. I will say. As much as I do like Vincent Cassel in this role, and I think he does a good job with it, because of the way his accent is like slightly Eastern European, maybe French, somewhere in there, there's certain lines that he says, and it's very specific lines where he reminds me a lot of Tommy Wiseau doing a line. Jeez. And I'll call him out when we get to him in spoilers, but there are like very specific lines where I'm like, don't say that. You have the accent where I can't hear that as anything else now.
No, he's French. He's definitely French.
All right, fair enough. Right. I just don't know what Tommy Wiseau is.
I think someone figured out that he was Romanian or Hungarian, something like that. But someone did figure it out. Someone did some like detective work to figure out, because Tommy Wiseau refused to, maybe it was Polish, I don't know, but he refused to say where he was from. Actually, that's not true. He didn't refuse to say where he was from. When asked where he was from, he would say New Orleans.
Right.
So he didn't deny the question, he just lied, obviously, and clearly. Music's pretty held back, but when it does pop in, it does sound, good. It's not necessarily like a memorable theme or anything like that, but it fits the tone of what's going on, so I have no complaints. Like, honestly, the only real complaint here, I think, because I feel like Cronenberg made the movie he wanted to make. I don't think anything in this movie that I have a problem with is a lack of skill. I think fundamentally the movie he wanted to make about this subject just wasn't a movie that I think was ever going to work entirely for me or you or anyone who doesn't like this movie. I think he made the slow meandering film that he wanted to make.
Yeah, it feels like I said. It's if it's about the death of his wife, it is very personal. It is very deep. I'm sure there's so much to this that while we think is meandering or whatever, it's intensely personal and very close to him. That it has to be in there for whatever purpose. I don't doubt that. But it does kind of put this blockade between the director and the audience where we just aren't going to be able to see into that side of his head.
Yeah, and obviously the idea of perversely watching our loved ones after they're dead, and I think I saw the phrase necrovoyeurism was a phrase that it's like, okay, there's some interesting idea, and that feels like very Cronenberg in the same way. Obviously this wasn't on Ace, but over in Collector's Cut, our other movie podcast where we go through seasons. And we did an erotic thriller season for the 90s, and we did his Crash. and that was very much about the idea of a fetish coming out of car accident victims and like them, like, and there's a weird fetish in this as well. It's not as extreme as that one, but someone in this movie does have a weird fetish, and I laughed out loud when it became clear that they had a fetish, because I'm like, oh, that's Cronenberg. There has to be a weird fetish in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's a thing. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know how much more we should say before we go into spoilers, but I mean, I do think it's very slick. It looks very, like, he is a good filmmaker. He knows how to make a movie. It feels very, very intentional, everything it's doing. And there's definitely some neat, like, ideas that are kind of sprinkled throughout. I just don't think it all comes together in a way where I was, like, invested in anything that I did get interested in. It started to feel like the movie forgot about those elements. And then even when it did eventually bring them back, they didn't feel as important because, like, the main characters stopped caring about them for 40 minutes. So why should I care about them still after all this time? So
yeah, no, you're right. I hesitate to call it a disappointment, because that comes with a lot of, like, how I would feel like I'm leaving the movie without having any sort of fulfillment. I think there is something here. As you said, technically it's good, but I definitely wouldn't suggest this to anyone who's, like, just casually looking for a movie to watch. I'd say that even before I know about the movie, if I'm being honest.
yeah, I mean, as it is, like, I almost wish that all the conspiracy stuff was just taken out. Like, don't get me wrong, I can see a good version of that being, like, a focal point and, like, tying into whatever, like, themes and story he wants to tell. But as it is, I'm like, he clearly wants to do, like, just an intense drama about trying to, like, deal with grief. And I feel like the conspiracy stuff never adds to that. If anything, it just almost, like, gets in the way and makes you think it's going to be a different type of movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's either take it out or just commit more. Honestly, it's one way or the other.
Yeah.
It feels like it's so much in this middle ground where they half-ass the conspiracies and, like, set up all these threads, and then the guy's just like, oh, well, that's our time. Bye.
Yeah, and it is a full 2 hours long, this movie. So it's not like it's lacking for runtime either. Like, the time is there to do more with it. It just, like I said, feels like it meanders. Also, I meant to go back and count actually, but this is one of these movies where it had, like, maybe 10 studio intros at the start. Like,
oh my god, it's so bad.
It was so many, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I don't like get your movie made, however. But there was a point where another one started, and I laughed out loud because I'm like, okay, this is like number 6 or something. And then there was like 2 or 3 more. Like, it kept going after I laughed.
No, the bit that got me, and maybe this is just how I rented this off YouTube. There's one that was like, the best way I'm going to describe it is, you know, the Cronenberg-esque sort of, like, particles, and it looks like cells, like, fusing and moving together, and it comes up with, like, SBS International. I don't know if that's his company or not. It rolls through like 3 or 4 more, and then it does SBS International again. It's the same look. I'm like, now you're just trolling me. What are you doing?
Yeah, there was some Canadian ones, there was some European ones. A lot of people chipped in a little bit of money for this movie, which, you know, fair play. He got his movie funded. I'm not complaining. It just made me laugh though, because at a certain point I'm like, I think we might actually be close to double digits for studio logos at the start of this.
I mean, it's a full minute 30 seconds of just logos, so
that's a lot. And what's more impressive is I'm pretty sure I've never heard of any of them before this movie, which is really wild. Usually at least one of them is like neon or something that I know, and then the rest will be kind of weird.
Yeah. Hold on, I'm checking to see. There was one that looked very professional. It was Saint Laurent Productions. That one looked like, oh, this is something I feel like I could have seen before. Just seeing if they have anything. Shrouds. Nope. I don't recognize a single one of these other ones. And it's all in French as well, so that's not helping me.
That wouldn't help. What's interesting is I just noticed the composer to this is Howard Shore, who did the Lord of the Rings movies. So there was actually a Gollum connection when I was making my Andy Serkis jokes.
There you go.
Very good. All right. Well, okay. I think we'll have to give spoiler warning then so we can dive into this. But I will say it's... You know, I really like Crimes of the Future, which was also slow, so I don't really have a problem with it being slow, but I felt like that was, like, hitting on some ideas in a much cooler way, whereas this, I think, like I say, just didn't click together for me.
I can't remember I remember I had some issues with Crimes of the Future, but just on vibes and memories, I definitely prefer that to this one.
Yeah. So, yep. Spoilers then for the Shrouds, you have been warned. And Well, I was going to say that we open with like the most awkward blind date in history, but we actually technically open with like a weird like dream he's having where he's looking at his wife's grave through a little peephole, but then he wakes up in the dentist chair, and the dentist is telling him that his like grief is making his teeth shrink, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think that's a real thing, but at the same time, there's just a small chance that there's some truth to it.
Yeah. Like they do a decent explanation or whatever. They're just like, oh yeah, it's causing this stress and yada yada yada. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. But all I'm setting up in this scene is, oh, Cronenberg's down with the body horror. I'm gonna watch someone's teeth fall out before this movie's done.
No. And it does that thing where it's like the opening shot of like when it cuts to him in the dentist chair, it's a close up of his mouth, and you just hear that tapping of like the little scraper hitting his teeth, and it's like one of the most unpleasant sounds ever. Yep. Where you're like, oh no, don't want this. Go away. What are you doing? But that's just Cronenberg. He wants to make you feel uncomfortable immediately. So here we are.
Nailed it.
So yeah, he's got a date. He's got a blind date with this woman of a similar age. And they're at his restaurant in the Shrouds cemetery, which is weird, and they do acknowledge this is weird that he's got a restaurant in his cemetery, because most, I mean, I don't know if I've ever been to a cemetery that has a restaurant in it before.
And yet it seems so distinctly Cronenberg. Like, if you told me, like, oh yeah, Cronenberg has a restaurant in the cemetery, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense, though.
Yeah. And I don't even necessarily think it's a bad place for a restaurant. Like, I mean, you know, it's peaceful. You look out the window, it's just, you know, a lot of space with graves. Like, I could see it working.
Well, that's the other thing, is that this graveyard, as we very quickly see, is not your typical, like, oh, we've just got tons of different sized tombstones and all these crosses and whatever, just scattered amongst a plot of land. This is very grid-like, and all of the graves are like human height with a screen in the middle, and they're all part of this grave tech network that I guess he developed. Yeah,
the whole premise of the movie is this the Shrouds technology, which we get into in a bit. But and the date's like fine. Like, when I say it's the most awkward date ever, it's fine for most of it. Like, most of it's just they're getting to know each other. She's talking about how she divorced her husband like maybe a couple of decades ago, but he was an architect and she still lives in the house that they built together. And then she's asking about his wife who's been dead for a few years. But they start talking about the technology and the shrouds and the idea of like all the like the fact that all these cameras are in the shroud and like it can do this and this. And he's like, hey, would you like to see my wife's grave? And he takes her out, and this is where it gets unbelievably awkward, where he's entranced looking at his wife's, and it's been 4 years, so she is a skeleton. She is a rotting skeleton in there. Yeah.
To be clear, it's specifically like he's developed this app, and he's like, oh yeah, you pull up the app, it's linked to your phone, everything's encrypted, you don't gotta worry about anything, and then just boop, there's her corpse, and she's like, oh, she's like right down there right now, and he's like, yep, we've got, look, you can zoom in and you can spin it around, and she's like, I gotta go do anything else right now.
Yeah, but then he starts like, oh, what's this on her face? And he zooms in and he's like noticing these little things on her skeleton. And he's like, what are these? What are these little growths or things that are like, is this a... And he gets so focused on it that he's not even paying attention to this other woman. And you know that classic trope of like, you're on a date and like you're too obsessed with your ex for one reason or another, so all you're doing is talking about your ex. This is like the most extreme version of that I've ever seen, where he's just staring at her skeleton and like not paying attention to her at all.
But like, again, like, so twofold with that. One, I'm blaming her for this though, because he specifically opened up with like, how dark are you willing to get with this? Like, are you okay with dark? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, you just opened Pandora's box.
Yeah, but here's the thing though. When she heard that, she was thinking, oh, he's into some weird kinky stuff. I'm down with that. I'm down. You want to pee in each other? Fine. I could be game for that. You want to, like, I don't know, what else do people do?
Hold on.
Whips,
Pete,
chains?
You got to pause for a minute. The advertisers want to leave. You got to let them go. But no, the other thing with this section, though, is, again, the metaphors, the ideas of what it stands for, the idea that he's on a date and he literally brings up his dead wife. Like, this is obviously the metaphor is strong here.
I mean, obviously, this is a very different, like, type of, like, because obviously when it's a divorced person, right, or someone who's broken up with someone, it's very different to bring up your ex in that case, because it sounds obsessed. I think there's a lot more acceptance of, oh no, if you're a widower, right, that you can still speak fondly of your loved one because you never separated. You died. There's a very different scenario. So I don't actually think it would be that strange for on a date, especially if you're an older pair of people and you've had a loved one who's died, to say, hey, can I see a photograph of your loved one? Right? I don't think in those situations, though, they whip out a photo of their current skeleton.
Yes. You want a photo? How about a Twitch stream? I agree with you, but I also think the very clear delineation here is it's not that bad for a date. Second date. I think that's a second date thing. I think you need to go at least one date without that happening.
Don't get me wrong. I think my instinct, if I had a wife who died and then I was redating, I would assume that I should probably try not, like, sure, I'll mention I'm a widower. That's probably something you have to open with. It's kind of a big part of who you are. But I would assume you don't want to talk too much about your spouse until you start getting to know each other a bit more. Having said that, though, I feel like there's probably a lot more leeway to it for when it's a widow situation as opposed to a breakup where it's like, well, cool, you didn't fall out with each other, you didn't have a disastrous marriage. It just ended in this very tragic, natural way, and there's some allowance for that.
Yeah, absolutely. She makes the throwaway line somewhere in here of, it's going to be hard for anyone else to move in if you're keeping her so close or whatever. Because the other part of this is that because he owns the cemetery, he's keeping the plot next to her free because that's where he's eventually going to be buried.
Which is not a lot of couples do, like, sort of buy plots together in advance. It's not a weird thing.
It's very much normal, but it does, she brings up the idea of, like, you want to keep on bringing new people into your life. If you're looking for a new relationship, it is going to be hard for anyone to move in if you've already said, I'm spending eternity with my wife.
I mean, she's right. I mean, obviously, I think maybe don't mention that you've got your grave picked out on your date. Maybe
just don't bring a blind date, even if you own the restaurant. Like, I get it, save some money, but, like, don't bring them to where your wife is buried, like, 15 feet away.
Well, I don't think it was about saving money. I thought it was more of a flex. It was like, because that moment where he gets to say, I own this restaurant, and she's like, oh, that's very impressive. Like, yeah, of course, he wants to flex there.
You say, like, okay, and that's it. Don't worry about it. I also own the cemetery, but we don't need to go visit.
Yes. My dead wife's outside. Would you like a 360, like CGI model of her skeleton? Would you like that?
We're working on holograms, and then we're going to just physically exhume them right in front of you. Why not?
Right. And we're talking, this is later on when he's talking to the other character. Sandrine Holt's character later on is blind, but he talks about how, they want to, like, address the fact that blind people can't use their technology. They want touch technology, haptic feedback. And I'm like, what's next? A fleshlight slot? Just so you can have sex with your dead wife? Like, where are we going with this?
Smell-o-vision. It's going to be the wave of the future.
Wait, does it smell like her favorite perfume, or does it smell like the rotten corpse that's there right now?
It's a switch you can flip, one or the other.
I want realism, or I want the memory, the happy memory of what she smelled like at her best. But yeah, so we never see this woman again, obviously, because she clearly doesn't want to have a second date after this.
Nope. And so he goes back home where the sister, and I'm blanking on her name at the moment.
Terry is the sister-in-law.
Yep.
Yeah.
She is a, like, pet groomer, boarding dog, stuff like that. And
this is her place, by the way. You said it was her back home. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He has a Japanese place.
He has okay, let's talk about his apartment. He has like a Japanese, like, fish moat around his bed, and I have to admit, it looks pretty cool. Like, I wouldn't mind having the little fish moat around my, like, it's, it's like a little tank that goes it's on the floor all the way around his bed. I'm like, this just feels extravagant and completely impractical, but it looks great.
Oh, absolutely. I've had fish historically over the time of, like, me growing up. The smell of that tank, if you don't stay on top of it, like 100% of the time, would be awful.
Yeah, see, that sounds awful. I wonder if you could just, like, have the water with the light and just have some, like, robot fish so there's never a smell.
That would work. Yeah. The only problem you'd have then is, like, general mold and mildew from having open water at all times, but you stay on top of that, you're fine.
All the maintenance sounds like a pain, but, like, I like how it looks.
But that's why you seem rich, because it's like, yes, I can afford to do the maintenance.
Oh, he pays someone else. He's not getting down there and scrubbing and stuff himself. All right, okay.
Of course not.
That makes sense.
So yeah, when they meet up with the sister's basically not chewing him out, but playful teasing of like, yeah, you're off your game. You brought up all the dead sister stuff too early, and he's like, yeah, well, trying to get back to dating again. And then it very quickly pivots over into her character trait, which is she seems to be really, and we'll get to exactly how much, but she's really into conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it knocks on that a little bit in this scene when they're talking about whatever's going on, but like it also kind of addresses that. Well, obviously it sets up that this is the sister of the wife, but it also at one point he says, "Oh, you very provocatively once said I had my sister's body," which is a weird thing to say to your wife's sister after your wife has died. Like, "Oh, you've got my dead wife's body." Like, it's like, okay, it feels like he was like hitting at something there, and that's a subject that we're going to be coming back to for sure as time goes on. But I mean, this is all character set up because the plot like inciting incident hasn't happened yet. That happens pretty quickly after this though, which is the next day. Someone has vandalized the graves in a cemetery. There's a bunch of them have been knocked over. Someone's sent a video of some of this carnage to his like security chief or whoever it is, and it's like, okay, why have they done this? Do they represent a group? Is this politically motivated? Is this like an ethical thing where someone thinks what we're doing is bad, so they're trying to make a point? Is it eco-terrorism? Like, what is the cause of this? What is the reason for this? And you feel like when it's like setting all this stuff up and they're debating these possibilities, that this is going to be like a big focus of the movie. And this is one of the things that it just kind of like after like for a good 15-20 minutes it does spend a lot of time talking about it. I mean, Guy Pearce comes in because he built this system, and he comes in to like try and like undo the hacking so they can get, because they're all locked out of their network right now because the hackers have done all this as well as demolishing everything. But after like this like 15-20 minute period, it's like, oh no, we're just back to his dating life now. We're just going to go do dating life stuff instead.
Yeah. And then something we glossed over, you brought it up, but the idea that he zooms in on the wife and notices like, oh, there's growths and there's weird stuff or whatever. He shows that to the sister, and the sister, when we get to the conspiracy stuff, she's like, oh, well, that's probably like a tracking device that's been embedded in her brain or whatever.
And do it for this because like is in hindsight, you're right. This is obviously just the tease that she's into conspiracy theories. But in the moment, we didn't know that about her yet, so I'm like, wait, is this really setting up that this is like some sort of tracking thing?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing with this?
Like, because part of the whole thing when they're establishing like, oh, is this eco-terrorist, is this whoever, is they explicitly point out the idea of, and it might not be in this scene, but they basically say certain graves were targeted. A lot of the graves were left more or less untouched. Certain ones were. And so they think because the wife's grave was targeted, that it has to do something with who she was connected to or other stuff like that.
Yeah, well, it gets there eventually. There's a lot of stages to this where at first it's like, hey, is this like random chaos? It feels a little bit specific. So is it targeted? So they theorize that a little bit. And then it's like, well, does this get something to do with these marks on the wife's skeleton? Is that what's going on here? So they start thinking about that. And there's a sort of setup here that doesn't get paid off till later where Vincent Cassel talks to Honey, his AI avatar, and says, hey, where's this doctor who worked on my wife? I want to talk to him about these marks on her bones. And Honey's like, oh, he's missing right now. We don't know where he is. And then we just kind of drop that plot for like 30 minutes because, we come back to it eventually with a different doctor that he goes and talks to, but that's much later. We do leave it for quite some time.
Yeah, no, they bring that up, and then they also say that he went missing in Reykjavik, which is where the eco-terrorists are also based. So it's like they're taking the time to mix together all of these completely separate conspiracy theories and making it this big mess of like, okay, the doctor went missing, these eco-terrorists might be involved, there's bumps on the bones. It feels like we're setting up this grand plan. We're setting up this larger conspiracy theory that is going to explain how and why all of this happened. And to an extent, once you get the actual reveal as to what happened, it makes sense why we're getting all these threads, but it also is like the least satisfying answer possible.
Yeah, it kind of all just funnels down to some paranoia, and we have all these kind of believable threads to like give us all these possible explanations, but the actual explanation is like much less interesting and a lot more straightforward. So it's a little bit weird. So they set all that stuff up. We set up the Guy Pearce stuff. And notably, when Guy Pearce is working with him, he does suddenly turn around at one point and just straight up says to Vincent Cassel, have you had sex with my ex-wife? Because he's separated from Terry, the sister, right? So, you know, so I guess in that sense it is an ex-in-law because he is divorced. Vincent Cassel didn't divorce out of the sisters, but he did.
He's definitely removed. Like, there's no way. It's now they're just business partners, but still.
But he's like, and they're estranged business partners because, you know, they make the whole point of like, no, like it's because he's still close with Terry, the sister-in-law. It seems like when that divorce happened, he kind of cut Guy Pearce out of like the company, and he's not really been a part of it, but he's been called back in because times have gotten a little bit desperate with this attack. So it's like, oh, we need him in to try and fix out the code and whatever. But he just turns around suddenly after they've been working for a bit and goes, hey, have you had sex with my ex-wife? And he's like, wait, what? Terry? And he very genuinely says no. And he's like, well, you never even thought about it? And he's like, look, the thought might have popped into my head once because they obviously look the same, right? You know, it's the same actress. But no, I never considered it. And besides, my wife literally asked me not to before she died. Stay away from my sister.
You know, it was just standard. We were having dinner one night and she said, by the way, don't have sex with my sister. And he's like, ah, damn, you caught me. I was right about to do that. But that sets up kind of his paranoia and also further pokes this bear that's already been kind of established with that one other comment earlier that there maybe is going to be something between him and Terry. Which also, the other thing that's been happening intermittently throughout the first half of the movie, it does fade away a little bit late on, but is this kind of recurring dream where he's in bed and his wife is there and she's always naked in this dream, so it feels very Cronenberg, but she complains, or not complains, but she says she's going to the doctor because she has to get her left breast removed. And the way they kind of talk about it, you can tell it's a dream because it's very calm and it's very kind of, you know, no one would actually discuss this topic in the way they're discussing it. But it's like, wait, why is he taking the left one? Is it because it's my favorite? And it's like, I don't think he knows it's your favorite. I don't think I knew it was your favorite. Is it because it's bigger than the other? And so they go into like a lot of like weird backwards and forwards. And then when we come back to this dream sequence later, she comes back and she's got like a scar where her breast is, but she also is missing her arm, which we also see the corpse was missing an arm. So it's kind of, you can tell it's kind of tying into what really happened, but it's this weird dreamlike memory of how this actually went. Yeah, it's definitely happening in a dream, but I really couldn't tell the difference between, is this just supposed to be a memory of what happened? The only difference being is that at a certain point in one of them, he says, like, is this really happening? Like, are you still here or something like that? That's the only thing that seems to, like, definitively separate it and say this is a dream instead of what really happened.
I mean, I think I disagree with that. I think it's clear, like, seconds into the first scene that this is, like, dream logic. There's something about the tone. It feels like it's trying to simplify all of their history of her when she was sick down to this idea that she's leaving him and going to this other doctor who we later find out this doctor was an ex-lover when she was like in her late teens. Like, this doctor professor seduced her. And so there's a whole weird like jealousy and paranoia element to that of like, oh, he had her body before I did, and then he had it again when she was dying, and like, you know, so he feels that kind of growing throughout the movie as well.
Yeah, so, no, and then it's just if this is the only time we're going to be talking about these sequences, when she comes in following her arm being amputated and her breast being removed, she lays down in bed and he like cuddles up with her and like spoons her from behind, and he says how like scared he is that he's going to like hurt her or something, because the whole thing with her disease is that she's also very brittle, very like her bones are deteriorating or whatever, and that's why they are taking samples. And that's the only time that I would say that there was actually like a jump scare in this movie, because I had my headphones on and I was like very intently watching. And then as they're like readjusting each other, all of a sudden you just hear this loud snap of her hip. And then she's like, oh my God, I think my hip broke. And the sound is still ringing in my ears hours after the fact. It was a messed up sound effect.
And notably, when he does eventually have sex with her sister, like they're in kind of a similar spooning position, but it's a lot more intense because they're really getting into it. So it's definitely meant to mirror this dream sequence of like he couldn't even spoon with his wife when she was sick. Either you know, and maybe in his head he's starting to conflate the idea of like, is it because I couldn't because she was brittle, or is it because she didn't want to be close to me anymore because she was cheating on me even in her dying days? Which in and of itself feels like an ultra paranoid thing to think, that as she's dying of cancer, she's like, he's getting paranoid that she's with another man. You know, there's kind of a weird like perverse idea there of like where his mind's going.
Oh yeah, no, I think, you know, it's just the boosted, elevated emotions and all that. Like everything's going on 110 when it's her last days and whatever else is going on there. But I do think the idea of him being afraid to make things worse kind of lowered their libido, lowered their sex drive and all that, is something that he regrets, like he misses from her and such like that. And I think that's a huge portion of where we get with the sister stuff towards the end.
But yeah, one of the things he says to Sandrine Holt's character as Sumin is that he does say that, yeah, like, you know, like her immune system was so bad towards the end that they were scared to even kiss because it might like give her an infection or something like that. So yeah, and to get to her character actually, because it's maybe not too far after here where we're talking about her coming to meet with him to talk about the concerns that her husband has, who's dying, about, and this is where the political side of this coming in is like, oh, could Russians or Chinese use these gravestones and the technology to build like a surveillance spying network? And I'll be honest, I never quite understood exactly how they would use this until later when they say maybe they would piggyback into the phones of the loved ones who have the app. But then I thought, but like, there's like a million other apps they could be hacking to do that. I don't know why this particular one would be a big deal.
Yeah. This is I say damn it because I was really hoping you would have had something on this, because this as soon as this started coming up where they're like, oh yeah, it's all encrypted end to end, but also the Russians and the Chinese are going to somehow hack it and it's going to make this huge super mesh of spying despite it being a single app on a phone that like I mean, they're saying that they are going to be able to spread this like nationwide, worldwide. They're looking to use this grave tech around the world. But like, how many people are really going to be downloading this app? Like, really, if we're being honest here, how many are going to be doing it? I don't think it's going to be on everyone's phone.
Not everyone is going to choose to bury their loved ones this way, right? A lot of people are going to say, no, I want cremation, or I want a traditional burial, or, you know, like, there's going to be a select few, probably more well-off people, and maybe that's the point, is that it's mostly rich people who are going to have this. Yeah. So, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if that's the point, I didn't get it. Because once they started talking about like the mesh and hacking phones and all that sort of stuff, it just felt like standard, like ransomware sort of stuff. And it doesn't make any sense that we need to have this graveyard app to take place.
Honestly, it's one of the moments where I think the movie was starting to lose me a little bit, but she does invite him over to her place, and again, she's blind, this character, Sandrine Holt's character, and he comes over to like talk to more about some of the concerns or whatever, and you can tell it's getting intimate because she says, hey, can I touch your face? And he's like, your face? Yeah, she's like, haptic feedback, you know, this is how I see people, and he's like, okay, and it's very slow and sensual, and then she says, you know, I mean, actually, it's after they have sex, but she says this, but she brings up being wary of honey, that when she was looking at honey, like when it was changing forms into a koala bear, which I don't even want to talk about that, but it was changing forms, and she saw some, like, her people saw something like extra code in there that's not meant to be in there. It is an important plot point, it comes up later what that is, but it's this idea that maybe, you know, these governments that want to hack the system are also keeping an eye on you. So we'll come back to that later. I just wanted to mention it because this is where it comes up. Here,
I have a lot of thoughts on honey, so I want to spend some time with that.
Well, I think we'll get to that when we get to what's behind honey, because all of that can be wrapped up in that ball. Here, it becomes this thing where he's admitting that he couldn't have sex with his wife or be intimate in those last couple of years, and the reason why he's admitting that is because she's talking about how her husband isn't interested in anything right now, and how there's no intimacy there, and it's clearly building up to her seeking some kind of comfort in him. And we don't see like a sex scene or anything, we just, you know, he has a dream sequence that we've been talking about, and he wakes up and she's lying there, and it's like, okay, so this is a thing now, and they're close enough that there's a sequence where like he's out walking with her where she's got her dog. Obviously it's not just a pet, it's a, you know, a seeing dog. But they go past his sister-in-law who's out walking a dog because she's a groomer, as we mentioned. And like the sister-in-law clearly is a bit cold. There's a lot like Sandrine Holt's been perfectly pleasant, and there's just a little hint of jealousy. There's a little hint of like something there, and that kind of leads to what the big scene between her and Vincent Cassel's character is, which is she comes over to see this fancy new Japanese styled apartment, and she drops a little line, "Oh, it's very Japanese, like your new girlfriend." To which she quickly corrects her and says she's Korean actually, but go on. But it's like they're talking about, okay, well, so what's going on here? There's these things on the bones, and she's not really comfortable looking at it. But it's like, this is weird. There's this stuff going on. Mauri's doing this, and we're talking about hacking. And suddenly, halfway through this conversation, where they go through for a good couple of minutes talking about theories as to who demolished the gravestones, why they did it, and if anyone's watching him or spying on him, she just suddenly says, "This is really exciting me." And he's like, "What, you mean like philosophically, or like, you know, because it's interesting?" And she's like, "No, it's making me hot." And then, you know, we basically cut to like her in the bed naked, and he's behind her, and like, you know, they're having sex. And there's a little bit more there. And I think notably, I think this is actually a really well written scene, the sex scene, bizarrely, because they are talking whilst they're having sex. And she basically brings up that her ex, when he messaged her, told her everything that they talked about. Like everything he said to Guy Pearce about the sister asking him not to sleep with the sister and all that stuff. She brings all that up, and it clearly is turning them both on, that they're kind of like betraying this request. Yeah. Like they've been both thinking about this, and it's all coming out. And yeah, so it's very intense. It's very passionate. And it's like, it woke me up a little bit, because I'll admit, for the last like 20 minutes before this, I was like kind of bored. And I was like, okay, I felt the intensity there. This felt like they really set up these characters where I felt this passion in this scene. But it does become this weird thing where she's got a fetish for conspiracy theories, to the point where in a later scene when they're sitting chatting about stuff, like she's trying to turn things into more conspiracy theories. And then he eventually says, "Well, what if the reason why this guy's dead or in that grave is because I paid someone to kill him to make it look like a foreign government, because I wanted revenge, and this was an ironic like ending for his demise." And she just stares at him, which is almost the camera at this point. She stares right at the camera almost and says, "You better have sex with me right now." And then it just cuts away. And I'm like, that was almost a comedy beat. The way it did that at the end of that scene. So that's her thing. She's like hot for conspiracy theories.
Do you think, like, right at the moment where it all crescendos, he just mutters like, "Jet fuel can't melt steel beams"?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like she likes ones that are more personal. So maybe like say something about what if I wrecked my own cemetery just so I could seduce you or something. I don't know.
No, yeah. It was just, it's got to be like little things. It'd be like, "I bet that your secretary's the one who stole your lunch out of the fridge." And she's like, "Oh yes."
So it was kind of wild though, because it felt like we're building to them, but then the end point of the movie, like, because this is the thing, by the time this is happening, we've basically forgotten about Sandrine Holt's character, and it feels like she's gone. It feels like, because at this point, like, they're meeting up, and she's like, "Hey, I went and talked to my ex-husband Guy Pearce, and like I secretly recorded it." And she basically accuses him of a bunch of stuff, and this is where it kind of comes out that Guy Pearce is behind everything. Like, he did all this out of jealousy to get back at Vincent Cassel. There is no real like group that's behind this.
I want to be really clear. When you say Guy Pearce is behind everything, it's not just he's the one who toppled the graves and then like that set off this whole other thing. Like, no, he is behind everything. To the point where it's revealed in this conversation that we already knew that he's the one who coded up Honey, the AI, and was like, "Okay, yeah, looks like your wife. You can go ahead and talk to her and she'll have whatever personality." But it turns out he's actually just behind Honey. Like, all the times that she's talking, he's just sitting there typing away, saying like, "and then this and then that." And so when you go back and watch the beginning stuff of where these sort of conspiracy things started, the idea that the doctor was missing and he was last seen in Reykjavik and all that, that came from Honey. That was something that specifically came from her. So pretty much everything having to do with the conspiracy was all just made up by him to try to get him like busy or distracted or whatever.
Yeah, and because he was paranoid that he was having sex with his ex-wife, which, because that's the thing, he's a complete psychotic conspiracy guy, which does lead Vincent Cassel later in the movie to turn to her and go, wait, you get turned on by conspiracy theories, and he's a complete conspiracy nut. So why did you break up? And she's like, well, because he's also psychotic and a complete chump. And he's like, okay, but fair enough, I guess.
I mean, look, this character is designed to be the dweebiest man to ever exist. Like, he's absolutely supposed to be not someone that can stand up to the awesome white hair of David Cronenberg.
Yeah, he is probably the weakest character in the movie, actually. If I'm going to sort of stop and like take assessment of each character, like he's the one that feels there to serve this purpose. And I don't think it's that compelling once you find out it's really just him, and it's all about his weird like jealousy and paranoia.
Yeah, because see, that's the bit that gets me is, okay, if you want to do this reveal that all these conspiracies, everything else ties back to him and is like, okay, this is all his plan, why did he do it? And you want to, you don't even have to set him up as like a huge conniving villain that was like always in charge or whatever. Like, you can still have him be a dweeb, but like, what was his plan? In the very next scene, I think we basically get the reveal that he takes why am I blanking on this actually? I just keep on wanting to call him David Cronenberg.
Cassel.
Because it's this Cassel. Yeah. Whatever his character's name was. He takes Cassel out into the woods because he's afraid everything's listening and all that other conspiracy stuff. And then he explains that he made up the idea that he was working with the Russians to make this super mesh thing. The Chinese found out about that made up stuff, and they tortured him and like forced him into becoming a mole for the Chinese.
But wait, because they think it's real. They want him to they want him to spy on the Russians, but he never actually did anything for the Russians.
Right. So he's like, I had to cause all this stuff, all this chaos in order to like appease the Chinese people. And it's like, so all of this was just based off of a wild misunderstanding between a group that we never even met and you? All right. Yeah. It doesn't feel satisfying.
No, it doesn't feel satisfying at all. And then one element that we didn't mention here is that when he does eventually see a doctor to look at the skeleton images, and he's like, oh, these are the sort of things that grow on skeletons sometimes when someone's got cancer. He basically writes it off. But Cassel really pushes them and says, no, I don't know, there's something about this. He's like, hey, give me some high-res versions. I'll take a look at them. And he has a later meeting where he says, hey, yeah, we discovered something. They're fakes, basically. And he basically shows that these images that you're getting from your app, from your cameras, have been doctored. Like, and this is kind of like tied into Guy Pearce's like controlling all this stuff, is that they've put these extra elements on almost to fuel the conspiracy theory that there's something going on. But he's like, hey, no, we've broken it down, there's just layers to them. They're just added on to the image, to the actual real skeleton. And when he brings this up to Guy Pearce says, yeah, I bet someone Chinese told you that. And yeah, the doctor that spoke to him did happen to be Asian. So yeah, it's like he's trying to like convince him. And when he shows, hey, the Chinese government tortured me and cut off my 2 fingers, it's when he's telling Terry, the sister-in-law, this, she's like, oh yeah, he lost those 2 fingers in school in like a shop accident. Like he's like, they've been gone for years. He's just that. And I'm like, oh, because at the very least I thought, are they trying to put us into this weird ambiguity place where we're not sure if it's real or not? But then as soon as she said that, I was like, oh, so it's definitely just all fake. It is all not real, and we don't even have and I don't even know if I would have liked the ambiguity, because I wasn't really enjoying the conspiracy part at this point. But the fact that, no, it is literally all made up from him. There is nothing real happening here. It's all from Guy Pearce's mind. And I get thematically the point of this, right? Thematically, the point is that he can't get over his ex-wife, so he's acting out and doing all these crazy things to cope. And that's a parallel to Vincent Cassel's character, who can't get over his dead wife and is, built this technology, these cemeteries, and he's doing all this stuff to try and cope. And the end of the movie, which suddenly, despite seemingly in a good place with his former sister-in-law, who he's now having sex with, he's actually going to Budapest with Sandrine Holt's character, who we've not seen for like 40 minutes by this point, but he's going with her, and she's all still very like lovey-dovey with him, so seemingly like he's not told her that he's been with someone else in the last couple of weeks, but whatever. Yeah, right? Sure. They get on her private plane, and he has kind of a final dream sequence where she's kind of turned into his dead wife. Like, it's Sandrine Holt, but she's missing the arm, and she's bringing... I think, if nothing else, the idea here is that this grief is never completely leaving. It's always going to be there no matter what. And that's clearly the point that the ending wants to get across. And that's where the movie just sort of fades to black as the plane's flying, and it ends on this kind of dour note. But I really do have to emphasize how little anything in this ending feels like a climax. It just kind of feels like the movie suddenly stops, and it was a little bit unfulfilling, if I'm honest.
The only thing you skipped over, you briefly mentioned it in an earlier sequence, but the only thing that I would specifically add on is once they get the graveyard restored, everyone gets buried, all that stuff, and they restart up the apps.
Oh, yes.
Someone is buried in his plot, and it turns out that it's the doctor who his wife had an affair with, and he's now buried down there with her, and he had like a gunshot to the head. And correct me if I'm wrong, they throw out a few theories as to what could have happened. He jokingly in quotes, says he was the one who did it. But we never actually like get anything specific for that, right? Like, we don't know what happened.
Well, I'm like, is this still Guy Pearce's doing? Is it just a fake image because he knows how to do that? I know that the dirt's fresh, as if it's been dug up.
And the doctor did disappear. Like, everything in the movie points to him actually being dead.
Yeah, honestly, it's something that I don't think it answers. And the only other interesting little detail here is that when they're flying to Hungary and he's like, hey, can this plane really get all the way to Hungary? She's like, oh, well, there's one stop and it happens to be in Iceland. And Iceland's been this like key location where this doctor disappeared and where this group is. I think it wants some ambiguity in the sense that, oh, maybe something's going to happen when they stop there. Maybe she's luring them into a trap or something. But I like, that's so thin. It's so, I don't know. It doesn't feel right either.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to piece this together because it feels like all the pieces are there. Like, the best description I can give is it's like you open up the box to a jigsaw puzzle, it's like 500 count. You just do a quick scan and it's like, yeah, it looks good. But then when you're actually putting it together, you've got like 6 corner pieces. And you're like, wait a minute, hold on. Something clearly has to be wrong here because there's no way this has 6 corner pieces.
I mean, I'm okay with. I mean, I wasn't expecting this movie, especially from Cronenberg, to have this neat, tied in a bow ending by any stretch. So it's not like I was expecting that. I don't think that I felt like all the conspiracy stuff just ended up being a big giant wet fart to me. I like by the time we got to the ending, I did not care about it anymore. I thought the Guy Pearce reveals were deeply disinteresting. And I didn't care about it anymore. So any ideas that there might still be a chance of real conspiracy stuff with like, oh, them stopping in Iceland or whatever, I just don't care anymore. And at that point, I'm like, yeah, focus on the character stuff. But I don't even really feel like that. Like, it'd have been nice if he's made a conscious decision that it's unhealthy to be with his sister-in-law, so he's going with her instead. Then that could at least be like a character decision that he's made. Like, oh, I think that's unhealthy. I think Sandrine Holt's character is like a more healthy like path forward for me, even though she's technically still married to a guy who's dying. But that's whatever. Small potatoes at this point. I don't know. Honestly,
the vibe I was getting from the way it was cut together is, to be clear, the sequence where he's saying maybe I'm the one who killed the doctor guy, and then she says let's go screw right now. That hard cuts into the final scene of him in the limo with her. It felt to me like this was saying, oh, he's going to be gone for like a month or whatever, and then come back and pick up the relationship. Like, it didn't feel like this was a permanent thing. It didn't feel like he was choosing Sandrine. It just felt like another day in the life.
This felt like a convenience thing. Although she does say, hey, maybe you'll like it so much you'll choose to stay. I've got a very big, nice house. Like, she does say that to him. So
yeah,
clearly there's like different forces pulling him in different directions. I mean, the only thing I'm definitely sure of is the idea that, like the memory of his wife's always going to be there. She's always going to like be lingering and always be a part of his life, and there's no way he can just completely, get rid of her. And that seems to be something that I am sure David Cronenberg feels about his own dead wife, is that, I don't know if he tried to redate, after like his wife passed away. I don't know if it was like early enough that he would want to or what, but
I mean, I'd imagine he probably did, but in terms of the messaging I'm picking up from this movie, it's the idea that regardless of whether or not he dates successfully or not, it's always going to be that relationship in his mind. That's always going to be there. Tainting is a strong word there, but it's always going to be something that is there to be compared to. They're in the forefront. It's not going to be something that he's going to be able to give a new relationship all of his attention to.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the woman said at the start, is like, hey, it's hard for someone new to compete with like your dead wife. And I think because this is through a Cronenberg lens, there's definitely a sort of dark, macabre kind of feel to it. And I don't think that's necessarily always the case. I think in the real world, like, yeah, obviously moving on's tough, and dating again after a loved one's passed away is obviously a challenge. But like, I think that there's an understanding by anyone who's, coming in to a new relationship. Like, if you've lost someone, they understand that that's the way you're coming from, and that person who's gone is always going to be a part of your history, and there's no, unlike a breakup, obviously, where it's like, no, at a certain point in that relationship broke down, so I expect you to hate your exes to a healthy extent. Yeah,
no, that's fair. I don't know. I think the part that's really bothering me is, yes, the entire conspiracy ending up being nothing kind of annoys me, but I'm willing to accept that, in that I wasn't expecting there to be any clear-cut answers anyway. I'm fine with it just being sort of this nebulous, we might get whatever. What bothers me is the fact that it feels like the whole conspiracy angle is pretty much all wrapped up once we get to Maury admitting to this stuff and saying that he did this, he did that. And then they just keep on trying to trickle in more stuff. They keep on trickling in, like, who killed the doctor? Did he actually lose his fingers to being tortured? Like, all this stuff here. It doesn't feel like it's going for ambiguity. It feels like it's going for, like, just, we didn't even realize that we wrapped up the conspiracy plot. It felt like that stuff should have gone before that happened, rather than after.
Yeah. I don't know. Dear. I mean, I guess, like, thematically, this idea that someone else is in that grave, so does that mean he can really move on now, is maybe, like, what
I will say
doing?
The doctor, like, the actor they chose to use for the scan or whatever, the shroud, still has a similar look to Cronenberg. He's got white hair, slicked back, like, perhaps there's a visual metaphor in there of, like, a part of him actually died and is now resting with her. Maybe that's the idea of moving on, to an extent, of being able to move on, is leaving a piece of him behind.
So is it progress at the end then, when he sees, like, another dream sequence of like his wife's, like, condition? She doesn't look like his wife anymore. It looks like the new woman he's with, but so it's like they're blending together. It's like he thought he'd moved on, but only partially. Like the
I guess it really delves down to, what does the metaphor of her missing body parts mean? And what would that apply to new relationships? Is that the, like, damages that he's carrying?
Kinda. I mean, maybe also a little bit of fear that this relationship will end the same way. So there's a fear of getting attached again, even though it'd be very unlikely that your new spouse would die the exact same way from the exact same illness. But
True. Well, I mean, it also comes back to the idea he mentioned, the fear that he's going to hurt her or anything like that. Maybe it's that same sort of idea there of, the relationship ended with his previous wife in a very, not unloving way, but less intimate or anything like that. Maybe he's worried that, like, this relationship will end up the same sort of way.
I would take the conspiracy sister-in-law, just because I feel like you know how to get her going, and at the very least you can have some fun coming up with silly conspiracies to sprinkle in.
Yeah. Here's the thing. You take that for maybe, like, 2 months. But long term, you don't want that kind of crazy.
Like, I don't know. Do your own edit of a ove and, like, without telling her, and then, like, do, like, a sort of Bernstein Bears thing about one of the details, and then try and build a conspiracy around it. Like, really, go mastermind on it.
Pete, that's just gaslighting. You're just talking about gaslighting your new relationship.
Yeah, but gaslighting is what turns her on. I think we're into
she wants to be on the other side. She wants to be on the side that's figuring it all out. She wants to be on that side.
I'm giving her a mystery to solve.
All right. I'm going to use that as an excuse if I'm ever accused of gaslighting. Like, no. I was just giving you a mystery. That's what it was.
No, it only was in this case because it's, like, her kink. Like, you can't just apply this to anyone.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, let's be reasonable here.
All right, I can feel like we're going to move on. So can I please real quick go back and talk about this damn AI for a minute here? Because this AI...
Let's talk about Honey. Well, because, one of the big things with the AI, is, and this is where it's like clearly someone's using it to mess with them, is when it also gets, like, the one arm
Yes.
like missing and the breast missing, and starts dancing seductively whilst looking like that. And obviously, and this is when he's awake, so he's like, what the hell? And he like kicks his chair away, and he's like obviously furious about it. I think it does make me wonder if, like, not that the dreams were like a direct result of like him messing with him with the AI, but I do wonder if, like, as he's sleeping, is this AI like talking to him or something, and it's kind of like provoking the dreams a little bit. I don't know.
I mean, for me, I think we know that the AI is being controlled by Maury. I think it's just a matter of he's confided so much to him, and obviously Maury was probably around when the wife died. He was still in the relationship with Terry at that point, so it's probably something where he had a lot of insider information regarding everything going on there. But what gets me about this AI is that, like, so often on these movies that we do for this show, especially recently, when we get these AI and all these characters, whatever, that are played for this, I won't even say evil, but just this menacing, this sort of slow kind of like, can this be trusted or whatever, it's always done via like either a very clearly robotic or a very clearly like photorealistic, whether it's supposed to engender the trust or keep you at an arm's length. This is the first one I think of that feels like modern AI, the ones that look like a Snapchat sort of cartoon filter thing going on. And I appreciate that. I really do like the fact that it feels so much of what actual like AI is right now. But I also can't get quite a grip on how Cronenberg, if at all, is working in modern AI into this story. Because obviously it all ends up being Maury in the end. I can't tell whether or not he distrusts AI as a whole, or whether it's just this one, whether he approves of like companion AI. It's a lot of stuff blended together there.
I mean, I think this idea of like having an AI based on your dead wife is unhealthy, and I think Cronenberg sees this as unhealthy. This is like another weird way of him trying to cope. So
that's fair.
He does drive a Tesla, which auto drives around at points in this movie, which, you know, I just mentioned that. I don't have much to say.
It's theming. He's not in control of his own life right now. He's always on autopilot. Something.
Yeah. I'm sure there's better self-driving cars these days, though. I wonder if they got maybe they got like a little financial incentive from Tesla. Hey, product placement. Here's, use our car and we'll pay you.
I mean, entirely. I will say this was first released in like early 2024. Obviously, there were still problems back at that point, but God only knows when it was filmed.
It was probably filmed in 2023. So yeah. It's certainly before like a lot of the worst of like Musk stuff was kind of on the run up and around and after the election. So
but it was still like post Cybertruck, which that's kind of the point where you say, maybe not.
Yeah, so I don't know. But yeah, I mean that's the Shrouds. I don't feel that passionate about it. It does feel like he had something that he wanted to explore and say with this movie. There's also a whole sequence where, and it's kind of separate from everything else, but Vincent Cassel like gets one of the Shrouds they've got in storage out and just puts it on because he wants to see what it feels like, and you can see it on the screen, like the visual of him in there looking like he's in a coffin. Just and it's kind of spinning around, and it's got like a sort of X-ray quality where it sort of goes under his flesh, and you can kind of see his insides. And it does feel like, if anything, from a tone perspective, it's the most provocative scene of the whole movie, because it's kind of like, oh, he's exploring what it feels like to be dead.
Yeah, and I think the AI even chimes in at this point, like it auto-activates and it's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I just want to try it on. She's like, the living aren't meant to see such things. Those are not meant for the living.
Yeah, so I really thought they were going to do more with this idea of looking at the dead people throughout the movie, and it kind of like never became that big of a deal after the initial like, oh, I saw this thing in my wife's skeleton. But hey, you know.
No, I was definitely under the impression, especially when I got the idea that this was going to be a metaphor for grief. This is a metaphor for being able to move on. That this was kind of end with the idea of, okay, it's broken now. We have to move on one way or the other. Like, there's no way that we can fix this. It's the tech is gone. Maybe the app never gets released from the hackers or whatever, but it's an idea that they're forced to move on. But no, they fix it up. They get it fixed. And I guess the more moral of the story is like that grief never really does go away, but it's explored through all these other different angles, and the actual camera itself feels, I won't say inconsequential to the story, but just kind of like background setup for everything else that happens.
Yeah. I guess a little caught in the weeds. It really could have like stripped some things out to focus on things a bit better, or instead go down a slightly different path where it is more of a conspiracy story. But I think the more personal character story is more what it was wanting to be up front, so I think that's the one that it should have probably picked and stuck to a bit more. All right, David, what are you rating the Shrouds out of 10?
God. So we were talking to the ratings rundown, and also at the beginning of this, I really like the themes. I like the way it handles it. I like how personal of a film it feels. It feels very much like David Cronenberg made the movie he needed to tell to try to like move past, or at least express his feelings on the grief of his wife. And I appreciate all of that. But I just don't like the movie. I just like the end product we ended up getting is not something I think I would ever really return to. I like the concept of the movie. I like the elevator pitch of the movie. I just don't like the movie. So collectively, I think I'm probably going to come out of this at like, I'm going to say a 6. It's between a 5.5 and a 6. It's not even like a high 6, but I'm going to at least give it the 6.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 6 as well. And it's 6 is such a weird number when I'm giving it ratings, because there's two types of 6. There's the type of 6 where I'm like, oh, I'm actually very pleasantly surprised this is a 6, and that's usually like a dumb movie which is really not that good, but I really have a bit of fun with it, so I'm like, that's a 6 out of 10, and I'm going to watch that again. And then there's the 6 out of 10 where it's a 6 in a disappointing way, because it should be better, it should be more important than it is, but it doesn't get there, and it's like a sort of weird, like, it gets a 6 like in terms of like a sort of very diplomatic score at the end, and that it's obviously much better than absolute crap, but it doesn't quite succeed at the things that it's doing, and therefore it's like a 6 that I'm unlikely to return to. This is one of those 6s where I appreciate some of it, I definitely respect the intent, and obviously with Cronenberg putting some personal stuff into his movie, but ultimately it's a bit dull in places, and it kind of lets things flounder, and it meanders, and I was pretty unsatisfied by the end, so 6 out of 10.
All right.
So there you go. So David's got his homework movie in just a second, but before that, I will tell you what's coming next week on the Atomic Cinema Experiment, and we are returning to the Godzilla franchise, the original Godzilla movies. We'll be looking at the second film, which is Godzilla Raids Again, so that is what we'll be doing next week on the show, so look forward to that. And just before David does his homework movie, I'll also say, hey, Patreon's a thing, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can go and support us over there, help keep the show coming, as well as all the other movie podcasts. And I promise David will never keep turning his head like this ever again, because I'm going to smack him silly.
Every time.
And the audio listeners don't even know, but the video folk are watching this going, why is David such an ass sometimes? Why is he such an ass like this?
Because what am I supposed to do during this section? Should I just pull out $1 and just like hand it over the screen to you? Do I just pass it out? Like, what am I supposed to just sit here just twiddling my thumbs?
I don't know, look like a human being. It doesn't have to be like an animated bit.
That's difficult. I am animated 100% of the time.
But yeah, so you can get bonus stuff like the ratings rundown segments we do for every episode now. And we do a monthly show on Patreon, or YouTube membership's also an option, but we do a monthly show called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst things ever made. And there's always more crap to review that makes us miserable. Sometimes it's very funny misery. Sometimes it's painful misery. Last time it was a movie called Tiptoes, where Gary Oldman plays a little person. You can decide for yourself.
I didn't even have fun with that one.
So yes, go check out Patreon or YouTube memberships and help keep everything coming. But yes, every week on the show, David goes back and watches one of the sci-fi movies we did on the Ace before he joined. So David, what was this week's homework movie?
Well, I was trying to figure out if I had another Cronenberg I haven't done. I think I've got all of them. Did you guys not do The Fly?
Not yet. No, I haven't done
Not
that
yet. Okay, yeah.
because we have to do the
fair enough.
50s ones first, then we haven't got around to that. So.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, I think I caught up on Cronenberg's, is what I'm saying there. So I instead had to look for something similar in spirit, similar in kind of, when I think Cronenberg, what do I think of?
Teletubbies.
So I went. You say that? I actually have in my closet some Eldritch Teletubby art that I bought off of Reddit like 5 years ago. It's fantastic. I love it. Anyway, I actually went back to the very, very beginning of this show. Not the very beginning, but close enough. Episode 3, Altered States. Felt very Cronenberg-esque from the description, and looking at the poster and all that, I was like, all right, let's give that a shot. And yeah, kinda.
It's not on Cronenberg. I can see the argument.
Yeah, it's got a lot of Cronenberg to it, but without spoiling the movie itself, from the term altered states, it deals with different levels of like human consciousness and diving back into like genetic memory and stuff like that. It's got a lot of sequences that are very like mind trippy and trying to make like big sweeping things through metaphorical images, and all those sequences, love them. That's exactly what I expect out of the movie. That's exactly what I wanted. Glad we had them. Also, the very end of the movie, without spoiling, I think by the time it gets there, it does the same sort of stuff, and kudos to that. The middle, and where we decide to go with the idea of moving through consciousness, we spend a really long time on a really weird idea, and I just don't think I liked it. I had a little bit of fun with it, but it overstayed its welcome significantly. And then once we came out of that and we did the next thing, the movie just kept going for another 15 minutes after it clearly should have ended. Like, it had the most obvious ending point, and then it just kept going for 15 minutes. So, same sort of pacing issues, same sort of ideas of like not doing things properly is like covered here in Shrouds. But that one, at least, it felt very slick. It felt very well done. This one feels very much of the 80s. It feels very much in that sort of style with the practical special effects and all that sort of stuff that they use. So I would say I did still have a little bit of fun with it. I'm going to come at it with a 5.5. Okay. I don't think it's quite, like, if I'm comparing to Shrouds, I think it's a little bit worse, but it is still on the positive side of things. So there's that.
I think I liked it a bit more than Shrouds from memory, but it's been a while.
You gave it a 6.5, but yeah, I mean, that was over 5 years ago now.
Yeah. I think I kind of liked it. It had some rough edges, but there was some interesting visuals. It felt experimental, and but hey, yeah, it's an interesting movie at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there you go. That is the show, everyone. That is the Atomic Cinema Experiment. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer at Salsa.